Hello there. I'm Koios, the Rōnin BeatMaker, and welcome to Lounge Rōnin. All things, everything. And on this episode, we're going to discuss. Well, before we get into it, make sure, if you are new to the channel, to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. And please make sure to leave a comment with your thoughts below and a little dash of constructive criticism, as that will help me and the channel grow. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Cascadia, the Lost Continent, Part 2. Now, if you haven't caught episode 1, no worries. After episode 2, feel free to catch episode 1 to kind of give you more of a basic little understanding of this area of North America and the Pacific of Washington and various areas around there. And we're kind of talking about the cataclysmic events that have shaped this former continent that is known as Cascadia. Now, without further ado, let us get into it. Alrighty. This article was written and updated August 25th, 2016 by D.W. Naff. Cascadia, a vast dark green land of mystery. Part 2. The 21st century is turning out to be a bad time for people who want certainty about our past human origins and history. All of the solid information we thought we possessed concerning human civilization and antiquity has dissolved into uncertainties. Sure. Controlled demolition, if you ask me. And we are entering into an era of informed imagination and speculation, as old paradigms have been broken and new ones have yet been fully examined enough to supplement them. In the past, legends and myths were maligned by some critics as poor sources for historical research, and often wrongly judged to have no scholarly value. But in light of today's ongoing reevaluation of human history, I believe ancient legends and myths do contain accurate reminiscences of historical events from the past and can steer us in the right direction. I completely agree. I think a perfect example of that would be the Iliad and the Battle of Troy. They speculated for, many years that it was just a story, that the Battle of Troy wasn't real, and then eventually archaeologists discover a portion of the Wall of Troy. So I love this saying. It's actually from Star Wars, and it says there's always a bit of truth in legends. And I really believe that when it comes to whether it's biblical texts whether it's some of these fantastical stories of old, whether the Book of Gilgamesh, the Iliad, the Odyssey, any of these stories, there always tends to be some level of grain of truth to it, whether from archaeological remains or even from our own modern technology. Which if you look at the rovers and the wheels, some of those designs were based off of which it was either the Book of Enoch or the Bhagavad Gita, one of those. And the design of the rover wheels, the NASA patented that from ancient texts. I mean, look about with Oppenheimer, was able to design the atom bomb from researching the Bhagavad Gita and learning Sanskrit, and being able to tap into otherworldly knowledge. So to pretend as if these ancient manuscripts and stories do not contain information that can either further humanity or destroy humanity would be foolish of us to think in such a manner. But as everyone is well aware, if you listen to this stream, you know that we live in the age of indoctrination and propaganda, more so now than ever before. But enough of a Rōnin rant, let us continue. Ancient cultures express nearly everything in the language of their own mythology. The trick is trying to guess or interpret what they might have been saying without straying into fantasy and delusion, or simply dismissing it out of hand. I personally would push back a little bit and say you do need to stray into the fantastical a little bit, especially when you're trying to understand, such mythology and the language within it. You have to delve into the fantasy. You have to allow your imagination to be a source of guide as you are, trying to retain and understand these stories. That's just my personal opinion. But let's continue. Here we have an illustration of the Crater Lake reflections. That is beautiful. Okay. Oh, hold on. Yeah, we'll go from here. The legend of Crater Lake. Cascadia's legends typically incorporate some element of historical and cultural information. Native American traditions delegated the tribe's history to the storyteller, which was a very important role. Descriptions of the landscape in abstract mythology beings often call up references to actual geological features and historical events which were witnessed during prehistoric times, such as Mount Mazama's eruption being mythologized into Kalamoth Indian tale about an explosive battle between Skell and Liao that formed Crater Lake and altered the features of the landscape. Which is kind of funny because you'd have similar stories told in India, and you go and you look in the Bhagavad Gita, and they're talking about getting radiation poisoning and radiation burns and all sorts of stuff, and they're talking about a battle in the sky. So, who knows how much of this is based on actual eyewitness accounts of something that took place in the sky. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. For my tinfoil hats. And here we have another image, and it's a sunrise at Crater Lake, which is in Oregon. when the chief of the below world came up from his lodge below the mountain, his tall form towered above the snow-capped peaks. Red-hot rocks as large as the hills hurled through the skies, burning ashes like rain. Like an ocean of flame, it devoured the forests on the mountains and in the valleys, until it reached the home of the people. Fleeing in terror before it, the people found refuge in the waters of Klamath Lake. Once more the mountains shook. The chief of the below world was driven into his home, and the top of the mountain fell upon him. The high mountain was gone. For many years rain fell in torrents and filled the great hole that was made in the mountain, fell upon the chief of the below world. The descriptive details of the cosmological battle between Skal and Liao remarkably parallel geological accounts of the eruption of Mount Mazama. The legend of a crater lake must have been first told well over 7,000 years ago by those who witnessed it, and the legend stands out as evidence that oral traditions can be accurately preserved and passed down for thousands of years without becoming so distorted that they lose their original meaning. And here we have an illustration. It's the image of Mount Mazama before it erupted and it collapsed, forming Crater Lake. Man, can you imagine seeing that? All right, here we have another image of Crater Lake, and it states the Klamath Indian legends about Crater Lake accurately describe the possession of its creation more than 7,000 years ago. For many years, rain fell in torrents and filled the great hole that was made with the mountain when the mountain fell upon the chief of the below world. So, something that I just think is interesting about, these oral traditions and stories is like how many of those that we hear nowadays that sound so fantastical, but, it turns out there is some truth to it. So, one that I'll, throw out there for my tinfoil hats is what was going on in Peru last year with the alien attacks and attempted abductions that were going on over there. And for anyone out there who's interested, you should check out my presentation I did on Canon Hotep's channel a couple months ago on the elongated skulls. And it connects to what I'm about to say because the incidents that are going on in Peru, I believe it was, with these alien attacks, that you can actually listen to an interview with a young girl who was nearly abducted. They described that, well, it turned out that these attacks have happened before in ancient stories and oral stories that were told of these beings with elongated skulls that would come out of the earth and abduct people. Now, if you say what you will about your beliefs on aliens or anything, I'm not here to convince you. I'm just providing you an anecdotal story and evidence to give you the idea of how a story about these elongated beings coming out of the earth and stealing people had been passed on for generations within that community, within those villages, that it now started happening in our modern time. So it's just another way of telling you that these stories that are being told, how often are they really telling us the truth? And we just don't realize it because we haven't yet experienced what those stories were alluding to yet. And I just put that, the reason why I say yet is because, oftentimes history repeats itself. And it seems like what's going on in Peru, it seems like it's history repeating itself all over for these villagers. So I highly recommend you guys, if you're interested, I did cover that story last year. So you can scroll down and you'll find it. But just letting you guys know, there's some really funky things going on with these, oral traditions and stories that end up proving, more fantastically true than just fantastical. But let's continue. Many legends are believed to transmit some kind of objective historical meaning and contain truths which the legend preserves through a kind of storytelling code as they're passed down to future generations. The Fall of Cascadia. The flood myths described in part of this article are referenced from a number of different indigenous oral traditions, originating from the Cascadia region. They suggest that ancient people here witnessed and survived some kind of devastating cataclysmic event in prehistory, whose impact radically altered the environment and also recorded by other cultures all over the world. Some scientists today believe that they've discovered evidence of a prehistoric cataclysm possibly caused by either a comet impact or a massive solar outburst. The cosmic impact scenario closely resembles details preserved in legends found throughout many different cultures, including countless flood myths from the Cascadia region. Now, to give you an example, the flood story in the Bible with Noah. But did you know that there is an Indian version of the flood story? And his name is Manu, not Noah. So, uh, two different cultures, two different belief systems, both have the same story. And in fact, the Manu story is older than the Christian story. So, if you're familiar with Randall Carlson, if you're familiar with Robert Schoch, if you're familiar with Graham Hancock, Graham Hancock is the one who coined the whole the Younger Dryas impact theory, and then it ended up becoming a reality. So you have these cataclysmic events that have happened, and many of these were told when the Ice Age was still going on. So we had civilizations that were, that populated many of these regions during these cataclysmic events. And here we have their oral traditions confirming these cataclysmic events. Yet we want to, at the same time, downplay and ridicule any fantastical stories about angels coming from the sky and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, sure, I get it. It's kind of, a little bit out there, but is it any more out there than realizing that they were an advanced civilization that was living during the Ice Age and then was wiped out during these megalithic, cataclysms? I mean, I'm just putting that out there as a thought experiment for anyone out there to kind of ask yourself these kind of questions. Why is it that when the monks with the Spaniards, when they were over in South America and they learned the creation story and the great flood story from the Mayans, I believe it is, that it predates theirs, that they had the exact same story, but it was much older and kind of more accurate. So we love to kind of downplay these stories and downplay these oral traditions because we live in a modern time and we have been conditioned to look at such um, cultural lifestyles and belief systems as below us, not intelligent. We've been conditioned to think like that. That's mostly a colonial mindset. Um, so I bring that up as a idea for people to really kind of think about and consider. If you're one of those people that kind of likes to ridicule your own heritage and culture. I mean, who told you to think like that? What kind of domestication has been put upon you from outside sources? So, just some things to consider when you are navigating this world and doing your own individual research. But let's continue. Enough of a Rōnin rant. Now, this image we have here, which we've been, lightly covering, uh, it is from the Mount Shata's Forgotten History and Legends. This is a map based on a group of scientists who are studying what they believe to be traces of comet impacts found around the world. These impact sites only represent what has been found to date and do not reflect the full extent of the boundary of the comet's trajectory. So, like we said, there are plenty of stories about these cataclysmic events, these meteor showers. Think about Göbekli Tepe and how that site was buried on purpose, as archaeologists have been able to um, deduce from the situation. So these are things to really take consideration. Like we talked about in part one about Petra and the underground cities in Turkey. So you guys really should think about these things. How much did these ancient advanced civilizations know or were given warning about these cataclysmic events? Just some things to think about. Let's continue. The above graphic illustrates where impact traces of fragments from a giant comet have been found around the world. Some of these fragments were estimated to be nearly 2 miles in diameter when they bombarded the Earth around 12,800 years ago. This cosmic impact scenario is believed to have altered the planet's climate, bringing an end to the last ice age, and also causing a mass extinction of human and animal life throughout the Cascadia region on a scale unheard of since an asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs tens of millions of years ago. In the past, Native American oral traditions were unfairly judged by their imaginary stories which had no historical value, simply told to entertain people. However, it's becoming clear today that these legends and myths do accurately preserve information about historical events which were recorded during prehistoric times. There are many interesting legends written about Atlantis and Lemuria which reference the Cascadia region, and Mount Shasta in particular, but these legends were largely made up over the past 100 years by mystics and occultists. They were created by people who were never here. Their ancestors were never here either, and left no discernible trace of themselves in the archaeological or historical record. The true legacy and story of Mount Shasta, and to a greater extent Cascadia, has never yet been fully told in modern times. And there you have it. Cascadia, the lost continent. And as I said earlier, as we were reading, these are stories that we really have to use in our geological studies, in our historical studies. We can't take these oral traditions and stories for granted, because if we do, we're losing an understanding of our history, of our past, and it can really be detrimental to our ability to improve and move forward as human beings and as individuals. So I highly recommend everyone out there who's listening, just take time and hit that like button and make sure to subscribe. And also, look into, areas of where you live. What was it like in ancient times? You might be surprised what you found. I was going for a walk with my mom, and I noticed some rocks that had some very, very suspicious drilling holes that look very similar to ancient megalithic structures in other parts of the world. And it made me start questioning what was going on in this area where I currently reside in. So I highly recommend everyone out there really take some time, if it's of interest to you, and look into your area, look into the mysteries of it, look into the geography of it. You might be surprised what you uncover. You might find some really fun and fantastical things. And who knows, you might end up getting a new passion or a new hobby. A lot of us out there, we need new passions, we need new hobbies. And I think it's a great positive to yourself. Oh, wow. To, it's a great positive to yourself to really think about investing in the past of your area, the past of your own culture, your own heritage, your own history, your own ancestors. You might be surprised by what you find and uncover. So go for it. Don't feel limited that you don't have, a degree or any of those kind of things. Graham Hancock, he doesn't have a degree in geology or anything like that, but this man has done so much for the community, whether it's geology, archaeology, because of his passion, because his determination and his unwillingness to give up, regardless of the ridicule and the harassment he has experienced throughout his entire career. So, don't be afraid. This is completely new to me, the Cascadia area. But I'm curious to learn more about it, wondering if, you know, has anyone uncovered any archaeological remains of, civilizations that may have survived Cascadia or remains of it. You never know. It's just really interesting stuff to really learn more about, the continent that you live on and how it was shaped to the world that it is now, and for civilization to inhabit it now. It's just fantastical stuff. It's beautiful stuff, and I think all of us can really value and appreciate the knowledge that can be given to us. Because, you know, the governments, their only purpose is to suppress, obfuscate, destroy, and hide history. They don't want us to know the true history. They don't want us to know the hidden history, because that could actually make us powerful. That could make us not needing the the governments, not needing to be told what to do, to actually improve our lives and our well-being. And they don't want that. They don't want us thriving with such capabilities, because they see it as a threat to their control. They see it as a threat to their pockets. Our ability to learn and improve and understand our world prevents them from destroying it and from manipulating us. So I highly recommend everyone out there, don't be afraid to do your own research. Don't be afraid to question the narrative. Don't be afraid to question history. Don't be afraid to look into history yourself. Because, no one is going to stop you. Only you can stop yourself. Only you can allow the fear of governments and institutions to prevent you from doing your own research, from being your own archaeologist, being your own geologist, being your own individual. So please, go out there, explore, and live. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Rōnin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far and you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button and ring that notification bell and subscribe. And please leave a comment with your thoughts below, as that will help me and the channel grow. And sprinkle in a little bit of that constructive criticism. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.